This is Michael Tucker, and you're watching the new Legends on Deck podcast with host Brian Koss and David Conde.
We assess people, big picture is we're showing you where you're compressed. And when things are compressed, they look a certain way. They look crooked foot, they look inside ankle bone low, they look front chain dominant because, well, that it is what it is. Like when you move the body those ways, the system literally compresses itself. That's just how it's designed. The same way that inside ankle bone high and back chain dominance are the look of decompression. So you want to be in a state of decompression. Why the ankle got locked was you started to get into a state of compression that is largely, we would believe, linked to first those chairs, right? The chairs, the shoes, and the training are going to be the three things that affect your nervous system the most throughout the day. So you're going to have a lot of resting time. And inside that resting time, if you're sitting in the front chain, it's going to affect the way everything molds, the way everything sits. And over time, the more you're sitting, the further you're in the front chain. Just notice what you do with your feet too when you're sitting in a chair. Usually you're into the heel, you're heavy in the heel just because of the sort of, design of the chair and where it puts you. It kind of doesn't let your foot necessarily play flat on the ground. Now you start to kind of track more into the heel, and then the heel starts to get that calcaneus, gets glued to the talus, and it's glued to the shin. There's not a healthy disassociation between the foot piece and the ankle.
Welcome to episode 19 of the Legends on Deck podcast. I'm Brian Koss with co-founder David Conde and our special guest, Ricky Stanzi today.
Yeah, so you see me in my festive gear here.
Yes,
I stole my hat, my wife's hat. I have my Darth Vader Christmas ugly shirt. One day we'll have a Legends on Deck ugly sweater.
There we go. That's a great idea. This is our special Christmas episode today. We're recording this on the 23rd, so we're still festive, getting ready for the holidays here. But our guest today is Ricky Stanzi. He's the director of education and the co-owner of GOATA. The GOATA method is an approach to athletic training, and it emphasizes natural movement and injury prevention, among other things. Ricky is a former collegiate quarterback at the University of Iowa. If you look him up, his stats at Iowa are great, by the way. He had some good years there. And then he played in the NFL and in the CFL for a number of years. Got drafted by the Chiefs. He'll probably explain that. And he's now dedicated his life to improving athletic performance through the GOATA method. So, Ricky, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate being here.
No problem. So, let's get started. Even though we normally bring on baseball guys, we're gonna get into some baseball here. Obviously, you playing in the NFL, CFL. That's being the athlete that you are. Kind of give us an idea as to what transitioned you from the professional athlete side to the training side. What was it that kind of brought you to the other side of it?
Yeah, so it was about 2010, bridging into 2011 when I was getting ready for the NFL draft. And I felt like my throwing mechanics were lacking a little bit. And that was the catalyst that I needed to start to kind of dig and look, behind the veil a little bit and try to understand what is this throwing motion. It was just something I always did from being a young kid, but I never really diagnosed it. So that was kind of the start of things. Like I said, I got drafted by the Chiefs in 2011. I had the privilege of working with Tom Brady's first quarterback coach, which was Tom Martinez, in the California area. And so I went out there pre-draft, and he was kind of the first guy that was starting to talk about biomarkers, biomechanics, planes of motion, and that kind of piqued my interest. Speed up about 8 years of, like I said, chasing the dream, on and off of teams, going up to the CFL, really honestly struggling throughout that, struggling still with my throwing motion, trying to find my groove. not able to compete at that level like I would have liked to. And so that always pushed me to kind of learn more about the body, try to understand what makes Tom Brady's throw go, what makes Aaron Rodgers' throw go, and then why am I sitting over here struggling to connect on simple routes? Like what is it that's slowing down my feet or slowing down my arm action? So in that journey, I had looked at a lot of books. I had been, watching YouTube and Eastern art, Western art, anything I could get my hands on that was trying to explain human movement. Spinal engine, this idea of the body moving in sort of a spiral type manner, not being rigid, not being piston like, not being single plane, single range, was really the first piece of information that started me on a track which led me to GOATA. And GOATA at that time was Jose Bosch and Gary Scheffler down in the New Orleans area. Jose was the first person that founded this movement, really the first person that uncovered it, observed it, because our system is centered around slow motion video. It's centered around studying the world's most durable humans, the group of them from basically embryo development, birth, child development, all the way to the track and field world championships, 70 plus age groupers, and then the indigenous cultures, the hunter gatherers deep in the Amazon, and then the decade plus super freak athletes like a Michael Jordan and Ed Reed or a Randy Moss in between. So we had the full lifespan on slow motion. And then from there, we brought out, or were able to observe, what's the commonality. And now that commonality is what we call the global laws of GOATA. And so Gilly had first observed these laws by using YouTube to his advantage, using the iPad to his advantage, using the glossary of video that's now available to us through social media to his advantage, to be able to look at these things frame by frame, and then to be able to kind of finally discern, well, what is it that the musculoskeletal system moves? Each system's moving something. Cardiovascular moves blood, pulmonary moves air, digestive moves food. Well, what's the musculoskeletal system moving? Because that's what's going to have its effect on it, or we need to know how that thing is being moved, either good or bad. That thing is pressure. In the baseball world, we'd call it weight transfer. We call it that in the QB world, right? Transfer your weight to one side of the body, transfer it over to the other. Well, that simple transfer of pressure needs to go down a very certain way. So when the pressure hits the musculoskeletal system, it'll essentially deform, not in a bad way, just the fact that it'll take a new form and then it will shape shift almost back into its original form. And so it will go through this sort of pattern that we were able to discern, or Gilly was able to discern through slow motion, looking at the world's most durable. And then now you have this pattern of durability, which we call GOATA, greatest of all time actions. And then you start to look at people that are fragile. So we started to look at who's falling apart. What does an ACL shred look like? What does an Achilles shred look like? Who are the people that need knee replacements and back replacements? What's the commonality amongst their pattern when they moved? And it was literally a binary, like, oh, these guys are working off of what we call inner ankle bone high, basically using the ball of their foot, treating the shin in an ability like a joystick to be able to open and close. And the other people are collapsing their feet and they're shortening the system and they're inviting compression in. So Gilly had this sort of blueprint, and then he brought it to Gary, who owned a gym, and Gary was more in the, traditional strength and conditioning side of things. But once they started to link up, then the system started to be built. In about 2019 is when I entered in, and that's when I kind of took over education and took over teaching it and talking on it, and just kind of further evolving the system off of the base pattern that was originally seen from Gilly.
Wow. Well, that's a lot right there. But
you can go further too.
Yeah, no.
That's one of my lighter intros.
I love it, and I think you started to hit on it, that weight transfer and mm-hmm. how that pertains. So what we're thinking about is, think about the GOATA method and then how it relates exactly to baseball, and it relates in a mm-hmm. huge way. Quarterbacks train a lot like pitchers do. Yes. And so pitching is a great example of how movement might work, and also hitting too as well. I mean, even the field, you're playing catcher, certainly shortstop, all these positions where your body has to move in a particular way.
But isn't it amazing that pitchers will go in the outfield, and what do they long toss? A football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they also do the same to get themselves loose and everything else. And so pitchers and quarterbacks are probably somewhat, the training is going to be, the arm action, getting the fluentness of getting the ball out of the hand and going straight. I mean, football, I don't really understand how you guys throw that ball straight, because my ball always wobbles. So. but
that's the
true that
skill
they
set.
do.
Yeah, that's the skill set. But no, you're spot on. I mean,
Yep.
that's we have in our institute, our education website, we have a whole section, a whole module of videos that we've called "The Walk is the Run is the Swing," because that's one of our narratives that we've tried to get people to see, is that when you break this thing down frame by frame, and you're not enamored with what field of play they're on, you're not enamored with their uniform, or you're not enamored with the object that they're holding, when you're really looking at it from a standpoint of getting back to what is that musculoskeletal system moving, right? Each system's moving something. These are integrated systems that work off of a tempo, they work off of a cadence, they work off of a flow. There's a healthy blood pressure, if you will, to the musculoskeletal system. You go into that cardiovascular doctor, they're going to look at the way that that blood is flowing. They're going to look at the system as a whole. They're going to say it's matching the ideal way to move that blood, or it's not. GOATA is saying there is an ideal way when you put that foot down to load the pressure. There's a certain way that the foot has to behave. There's a certain way the shin, the thigh, the torso, the bicep, the forearm, it all has to take place in a certain way. And now there is a spectrum of movement that can open up to you, because there's sort of a scale, almost like a light dimmer. So remember, it's pressure. So that means the pressure can increase, or it can be kind of kept very low. When you're standing and when you're walking, that would be like turning on the light switch, but keeping the light very dim. It's very low. There's not much pressure. So the behavior through the musculoskeletal system will look much quieter when the pressure actually hits that framework. Now, if I go to turn that light up a little bit, and let's say I go to jog, the light gets a little bit brighter. The behavior starts to show itself a little bit more. You take that into a run, sprint, cut, juke, jump, throw, swing. Those are all really still the same movement. They're just getting louder because the pressure number, the force number is increasing based off of the task or the circumstance that is playing out. So that pitcher that's on the mound, when he's getting ready to hurl that ball down the diamond and the batter's sitting on the other end, they're both using the exact same pattern at the base of it all. So they're both doing the same thing. If I'm a right-handed pitcher, I'm a right-handed batter, they're both going to load up their right columns and then, like a hurricane, tornado them almost at each other. And it's a battle to the ball, right? It's, can I get that ball past his bat, and can I stop that ball from going past my bat and match it, right? And then put it out into the field of play. So how they're loading their right sides in that situation are exactly the same based off of our blueprint. And it would be the exact same behavior when they went to go walk to the dugout when the inning ended, because it's still the same game. If I'm going to go walk to the dugout, I'm going to put all the pressure into my right column. I'm going to load it up. I'm going to transfer it. Then I'm going to release and reset that right side, as the left side does the same thing. Well, when you're going to throw a ball down the mound, what do you think that big leg kick is? What do you think that big investment over into the right side is? It's a huge loading of pressure, almost like a catapult. Load this thing up, get the pressure packed in a very organized way so that you can exploit that, and you can, what we would say, corner it and unleash it down towards the batter. And then you have to catch all the pressure on the left side. And you'll see guys do this. Like, one of our favorite pitchers to watch is Max Scherzer, because he pretty much hits all the biomarkers of durability, which he's been one guy that's been able to stay outside of last year having a little bit of oblique problem, and that was more to do with his tail to crown. He's been very healthy. So you watch these guys, they'll throw the pitch to finish the inning, and then they literally are able to take the pitch and just keep walking to the dugout. And it's like just a continuous wave of pressure depending on the task or circumstance. It was super loud for that one pitch, then it quiets down as they walk. So the walk is the run, is the swing, it is the throw. You can swing an overhand, you can swing chest level, and you can swing floor level. And you can start to imagine all the different derivatives in sport that can show up between those three levels of swing. You have your volleyball spike, you have your tennis serve, you have your pitcher, you have your quarterback, your shortstop, you have your tennis overhand, or you have your baseball bat, you have your lacrosse stick, you have your hockey stick, you have your golf. So it's all encompassed in the same action of loading pressure into one column, transferring it out. That is your base forward movement. Remember, we talked about studying the indigenous cultures, studying the tribes that are butt naked, barefoot, still deep in the Amazon. They're living a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, because that's really what your musculoskeletal system's skill set is. Like those are your powers. Your powers aren't, you don't have big claws. You can't jump really high. You can't swim really great. You're not that good at anything compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, but you know how to work in a pack. You know how to run for a very long time. You're great at trekking. And then you have the ability to throw and to swing with high levels of accuracy. Just notice how sports have been set up, and even the pay scale has been set up around the throw and the swing. The game of football is the throw. It's all about the throw. They set the game up for the throw. The guys that can throw it the best get paid the most. The guys that can protect the guy that throw it the best get paid the most. The guys that can get to the guy that throw the ball get paid the most. Look at baseball, your best hitters, your best pitchers, right? And so the game is sort of centered around this ability. The sports are centered around forward locomotion. They're just dressed up slightly different, but it's still that same inherent, innate blueprint that would be deployed in the Amazon this morning as they have to go hunt and gather.
Well, you know, that brings up, I'm thinking of something a little bit different as you're talking. There's, you know, you look at the guys that historically, like take baseball, guys that have been power hitters. You know, nowadays we think of power hitters as being, you know, all built, and, you know, it's all about muscle and strength, right? Yeah. But you look at somebody like Ted Williams that hit 520 something home runs in his career, and the guy was as thin of a guy as you'd ever see. But it must have had to do with the motion of the swing, the weight transfer, and the proper, you know, or a pitcher, somebody like Pedro Martinez comes to mind. Mm-hmm. Pedro Martinez was a real thin guy, didn't appear to have, you know, super lower body strength from what you could see. I'm sure he did, but it must be the mechanics of the way that he was able to sling the ball.
I think that clue there, that, you know, piece of information that you start to notice when you do go back and you look at the Ted Williams, you look at the Jackie Robinsons, you look at those athletes, the Willie Mays that were, we call them straight foot, inside ankle bone high, narrow columns. Babe Ruth was like this. And if you look at the way that they were moving, those are kind of the trump cards in a sense that show you, like, well, it really is the movement at the base of it all. Now, you could stack size onto your frame, and then you could further exploit that movement with a little more size. But what we've noticed in the training world is that when you go search for the strength and you look for that first, you will actually ruin your durability. So you will strip away your durability of the system for the sort of increase in strength. And yeah, you can have a short-term increase in strength and you can have a short-term increase in production, but it's very hard to stay on the field for the full season, let alone 2-3 seasons stacked. Where when you start to look back at the old players, start to look back at the Jordans, back at the different eras, they were able to put a lot of time into their sport, not only in the season, but in the off season. It's just a different world now. There's like time management. That's a new thing. So if you look at it from the standpoint of how they trained back then, I mean, these guys had other jobs, essentially, some of them. So they weren't invested in the strength culture. They weren't invested in that. They just played the game. And the game is centered around this forward movement. We obviously know that kids back in the day were probably more apt to go outside and to play games than they are to sit in front of a screen like we are nowadays. So, you know, we claim this bigger, stronger, faster title nowadays, but what it's really happened is we've done a better job of selecting body types for the task at hand. And we've also been able to increase the equipment and the technology and the recovery stimulus around the athlete, which can start to make you feel like, you know, along with diet, you can start to look at these people and say, wow, they're bigger, stronger, faster. Well, it's like, well, yeah, you start to put weights on people, their muscles get bigger, but it doesn't mean they're more durable than Ted Williams or that they're better than Hank Aaron. It just means they have more resources, and we've now figured out how to direct your time, in a sense, to improving the skill. But at the base of it, the way that you move is going to be number one, because your best ability is availability. So you should really train for durability, and you'll get the strength as an offshoot, right? Think of something that's durable. If I'm giving you something that's durable, what also is it? It's strong, right? It won't break. It's very resilient. So we want our bodies to be durable, and then you'll have the strength, you'll have the speed, you'll have the suppleness that goes with it. But really, the body was set to not break down, and we've sort of put that to the side out of this pursuit of strength and speed, simply because it's easier to measure. It's more challenging to measure durability. You need to look frame by frame and have sort of a reference to go off of, which is what we've tried to do with our assessment.
Well, on this, well, that's a lot of information, and honestly, I wish I was a lot younger because I would take all this information. I'd be the elite athlete that I thought
Everybody says it
could have been. When you guys are talking about, when you were mentioning one thing about athlete that, you know, you put the weight on, right? But still you do all the other stuff and you can still be elite. And I think about Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds was an amazing hitter, speed, everything, before he got jealous of the big guy that wanted to be big. I guess that's what it was. But he was an amazing hitter. I mean, he could have just been on Hall of Fame and just that. I think the strength that he put on just made the ball fly 500 feet further. But at the end of the day, you still have to be able to hit the ball. No matter how big you are, how strong you are, if you can't hit a baseball, if you can't throw a football, it doesn't really equate to anything because you still have to have that talent. But it's you know, the thinner guy, if he does it the right way with the body, he's going to do this, be able to do the same thing. Maybe it's not grand like Bonds did it, but he's still going to be able to be, you know, that type of athlete.
It's still productive. You know, I think we've somehow convinced our young athletes that they're looking for velo. They're looking for a 1 rep max in the sport. The sport's not a 1 rep max. The game is so nuanced. You know, I don't know the game of baseball that well, so I won't sit up here and pretend that I do. But like from what I pick up, it's to try to, you know, earn runs. It's to try to win the game. Like you're still playing a game. You're playing a chess match, just like you would be on a football field. Whereas like we've made these young kids think like, well, it's all about how fast the bat swings or how fast the ball is thrown. It's like, no, man, you got to have creativity inside of how you're throwing that ball. And you have to have creativity in your ability to match the bat to the ball. You can't just swing out of your socks every time uncontrolled. You have to be able to control your motion. Same thing, you have to be able to control your motion on the mound. And the same thing goes for football. You know, we have these guys that we like, it's all about the 40-yard dash, the 40-yard dash. If you go look at the top 40-yard dash athletes from the combine, it's a very forgettable list because it doesn't make you a good football player. Being a good football player is spatial awareness. It's X's and O's. It's like this chess game that is sort of being played in any other sport, right? Whether it's basketball, baseball, lacrosse, hockey, there is a game being played. There is a skill set that is needed. And what we would rather have is we would rather have a group of durable athletes that are spending more time on the baseball field and less time in a recovery model, less time in a gym trying to turn on their rotator cuff, right? Because the reality is you're going to get good by playing. You're going to get good by repping it out. So you need to get the athlete back to the field, back to the pitch, back to the court, and let them play their game. You know, I mean, Michael Jordan, in his contract, he had a for love of the game clause, which meant that this man could go play basketball at any given moment of the offseason, anywhere he wanted. And he did. There's tons of video of this guy everywhere playing basketball. Could you imagine that nowadays? Like, it would be like the worst nightmare. To get anywhere near anything that's best to ever play the game. And they kept playing their game more than they did the other stuff. Now we've got this world where I turn on Instagram and there's a kid just literally trying to throw out of his shoes to get max velo, and he hits some number and everybody jumps up and down. They slap him on his chest. It's the same culture that's being done when they go to do a 1 rep max hang clean and everybody's just slapping them and that's become the sport. Whereas the real athletes, the Randy Mosses, the Iversons, oh, you guys go do that. I'm going to go play the game. I'm going to go get better at the game. So like GOATA is all about getting your body durable so you could just go run. You can wake up and you can go play and you can get better at the thing that's actually your goal. Your goal is to win baseball games. Your goal is to pitch efficient innings. Your goal is to be an efficient hitter. It's not just to swing the bat as fast as you can or throw the ball as hard as you can. It's to learn the skill that is required to play for a long time and to build a legacy for yourself.
Awesome. That's a great point. That's a great point. That made me, I wasn't aware of that clause in Michael Jordan's contract, but that's absolutely true. You think about today now, you know, we got in the spring, we've got the World Baseball Classic coming up, and I'm sure there's a good number of players that we're skeptical about joining the teams because they the MLB franchises themselves are probably worried about it because they're thinking, okay, well,
it's more throws,
more throwing,
more runs.
Exactly.
So more intense than anything else.
More
intense right away.
It's competition. It's not just exhibition.
There's no leading up to it. You're in your home country. You're representing your home country. That's more intense. That you want to do well. You don't want to embarrass anybody. Everything you've shared with us is kind of like, it's opened the door to understanding the way to get an athlete to kind of get to that next level. I mean, physically, mentally. And on this show, we like to really delve into the younger players, the younger athletes. What do they need to do to get to that next level? Like what conditioning, what are the steps that they should take? Because you have some athletes. I'm a baseball coach. I coach anywhere up to like 13 years old. Excuse me. And a lot of times, you're doing the regular fundamental stuff, but you also, and I believe in having them play the game more than anything else. Just play, get out there. But you also may have a couple of kids that you think, man, these can get to the next level, but the next level is elite. So what is it in GOATA that can help the younger athletes kind of get in that rhythm and that body type to get to that next level?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think the first part that we try to push towards our athletes and the parents of those athletes is awareness. So we've talked a lot about like a pattern, a specific way of moving. So early on when an athlete shows up, ideally we would show them this pattern, the good and the bad. Then we would show them how they're moving. Then they can do the simple subtraction. We can go, oh, see how the good athletes are moving, right? See how Jackie Robinson stands, see how Babe Ruth stands, right? Now see how you're standing, see how they got straight feet and they're close, and then you've got crooked feet and they're wide. So the first thing for the young athlete is an awareness to how they're organizing that pressure throughout the day. So there's a lot of great swing coaches and throw coaches, and there's a lot of strength coaches that they're going to spend their time with. And that's good because they got this sort of 10% of the day that they can up level. And a lot of athletes are chasing that 10% where they're going to do intentful discipline work towards their craft. And we applaud that. And we have an answer for that as well at GOATA. But one of the first things that we really go attack is the 90%. So we would call this the non-negotiables, how you're standing throughout your day, how you're walking throughout your day, and then what resting options you're choosing. Like we talked about, we're studying embryological development, we're studying child development, we're studying indigenous cultures. So this is a body that's built to walk a lot of reps in a day. And that's a non-negotiable, right? Everyone's going to get near this 8,000, give or take number, thousands of reps a day of walking. So it already is implied that how you walk needs to have some sort of durability because it's going to be a longevity thing. You stack that on a lifetime, that's a lot of reps that you're going to burn through. You can see why people start to go south around age 40 or 50. They're only halfway through. So we try to make a very important point of emphasis to the young athlete that, hey, how you're walking around school, how you're standing around school, how you're sitting, and then choosing to sit on the ground when you do find the available time, because that's the dirty little secret about our recovery is that we're not supposed to sit in chairs. We're supposed to rest. Movement and rest are flip sides of the same coin. So rest implies movement and movement implies rest. So the resting shapes that you see babies and indigenous take across cultures all over the world naturally, crisscross applesauce, sitting on your shins, the innate inside ankle bone high resting squat, cowboy posture. There's a ton of different postures. Those aren't taught to us. Those are just things that we already have built into our suit, and we do them naturally. We want our athletes to go back to those floor resting postures and to spend less time sitting in chairs, which you're already being bombarded by that at school, on the bus, in the car. So if we can get our athletes to start to get back to the ground during the day, going along with sort of their recode regimen that we would give them off their assessment, but then teach them, hey, when you're walking and you're standing, and here's what I tell everybody, and this is free game, there's three things you should think about when you're standing or walking. Keep your feet close, keep your feet straight. So your second toe, in between big toe and second toe, is going to point straight ahead. And then eggshell heels. So you want to be the big cat. Your heel has got nothing to do with explosive, durable movement. If you put your heel on the ground, you're going to lock up that shin, which is going to lock up the thigh, which is going to shred your knee or shred your Achilles or start to blow out your back and the connective tissue upstream. So you want to keep the heels very eggshell against the ground. You don't want to put pressure in them. Instead, you want the pressure to be in the meat of the foot, the ball of the foot, as we've come to call it. And we sort of already know this. You know, when we talk about athletic position, what do they show you? The tail goes back, the crown goes forward, and you get to the balls of the feet. So you quiet that down a little bit in your standing and your walk, but it should feel like almost a credit card alignment when you're standing or walking. What I mean by that is I could almost feel like I could put a credit card or a piece of filler paper underneath my heel at any given moment throughout the day, just as a reminder, an imagery reminder for the athlete that, hey, don't let the pressure sit in the heel. Let it sit on the ball of the foot, sort of the ribeye of the foot, and treat that heel like an eggshell. Now, in your standing and your walk, it's very quiet. The pressure, the numbers aren't too high. But as we start to ramp it up into our sprint, you'll actually go from really a credit card alignment to like a high heel alignment where the heel gets very high, or if you're cutting, juking, jumping, the heel needs to elevate even more to withstand all that pressure, but it's still the same blueprint. So if you get an athlete to start to walk well, to start to stand well, to start to put better habits into their day-to-day, they get more decompressed, meaning the system has more space. It starts to complement what they're doing at the 10% instead of even further wrecking them. So now they get a little head up on the competition. And I try to tell this to all the young athletes. I'm like, there's no kids thinking about where they're standing, how they're standing. There's no kids thinking about sitting in a chair or sitting on the ground. There's no kids thinking about eggshell heels. So, and that's going to be the 90% of the day. No matter how many reps you put in at baseball or during the gym and strength and conditioning, there's always going to be thousands more that are placed on the time under tension in your resting derivatives and the time under tension or the reps that go out in your walk. So that's something that every kid that listens to this or every parent can start to attack right away. Just go back to the ground, sit in these ancient postures. We have a certain guide as to how we do them. So if they're looking on our websites or looking on our YouTube, they'll be able to see that. But like I said, feet close, feet straight, eggshell heels, almost as if you're walking the line, like a model type walk. That's that Jordan walk, the Ed Reed, like they call it pigeon toe, Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, Babe Ruth, Ricky Henderson. Their feet were close. Their feet were straight. We see the same thing in the babies. We see the same thing in the indigenous. Those people so happen to be durable. Pretty common sense, but nobody's really attacking that 90%. So that's where I tell our young athletes to start.
So you kind of mentioned that when you hit the 40s, 50s, the walking doesn't help. I'm almost 50. Can I do it now? Is it going to help me at all?
It's better to start. It's better to start late than never. It's kind of like, it's like I try to tell people, I'm like, it's one of those, like you find out and you go, oh shoot. Like you said earlier, like, man, I wish I had this when I was 9. That's your first logical answer. Then the next thing is like, well, what can I do about it now? Well, like I'm 35. And then once you hit, I mean, I was falling apart at 25, to be honest, but because I had probably sped things up through strength and conditioning and sports. But we have an epidemic where 40, 50-year-olds, they're really only halfway through the connective tissue and joint capsule life. You know, it really should last 110. They say about 120 would be the max. So at 40, 50, it's still pretty young, but we think of it as old. Well, in the indigenous communities, it's not old, right? That's still a prime hunter at that point. That's still a prime gathering age at that point. They're not sitting down doing nothing. They're working. So we've burnt through our connective tissue at an alarming rate, but it's because, go back to the, systems thinking. If you go to the cardiovascular doctor, you go to the digestive, the pulmonary, and they find an issue, what they have spotted, they'll give it a name, but in reality, what they have spotted is compression. So there's a ideal tempo, cadence, rhythm, flow to every system of the body. When you show up and you're off of that tempo, cadence, rhythm, flow, there was a decompressed state that should have been the ideal where everything could flow and move the way it was designed. Now you're somewhat compressed, right? It's what leads to a heart attack. It's what leads to blockage, right? It's bad. People can't breathe because they have blocked airways or whatever it may be. It's just compression. The same thing is taking place in the musculoskeletal system. That shoulder, that torso, that head and neck, that foot, that shin, that thigh, it has a certain allotted amount of space at the start that it needs to keep so that it can do this multiplanar, almost gyroscope type movement like a ball and socket would, so that you can propel and you can move the pressure in an organized way. Well, when you start to shorten and compress that framework, it's like a joystick. We use this analogy to explain the movement. Your body moves like a joystick. So the platforms would be your feet. Think of the Atari joystick. It's got a platform that doesn't move, so the joystick can move. So the foot is the platform not moving. It's holding a strong inner ankle bone high, light heel shape. And then the joystick would be the shin, thigh, torso, bicep, forearm. That's going to do this joystick movement, down, back, out, up, around, and in, down, back, out. What happens to us as we get older and we sit wrong and we train wrong and we walk wrong, we basically just start putting little bits of crazy glue in that joystick compartment. And so it starts to lose its magical movement that it was given at birth. That movement gets shortened, it gets compressed. You only can move with what you have. Now what you don't have starts to degrade. It starts to fall apart. Then eventually you're 40 and 50 and they're like, well, your knee is just bone on bone. Let's shave it off and start fresh. But well, it wasn't that one moment that did it. It was living a lifetime in the wrong pattern. So you got to get back to decompressed. We all have to do it, whether we like it or not, or you're just going to have to do pills, shots, and surgeries. But it's never too late to start. You just got to know that when you're pushing 30, 40, 50, you're not as malleable as that 9, 10-year-old nervous system wise. So it will take longer. But for your parents and you coaches, this is the opportunity to stop any of the bleeding in a 9, 10, 11-year-old and get them back to their GOATA, back to their birthright, so they don't got to go through any of the nonsense that we went through as athletes or even into our older years with, back, knee, and hip issues.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about kind of some names that of athletes that are doing some of this stuff the right way. Any other names come to mind? I was thinking, Tom Brady's got to be doing a lot of this type of thing. You don't play until you're 45 years old in the NFL unless you're doing something right.
Sure.
And the baseball side, the guy that I think of that played the longest had to be Nolan Ryan at a top level. And I used to hear things about his training and the things that he would do. You mentioned Max Scherzer as a current guy. What is it that Scherzer is doing that you see that he does, or is there other guys like him that are doing things, movement wise in such a GOATA way?
Yeah, I think, we try to keep it simple for our pitchers, and to give you guys a paint an image of what Scherzer does really well, I'll talk about just 4 concepts. So the first one is tail to crown relationship. So picture you're at second base and you're watching Scherzer, you're on that back view, you're watching Scherzer throw that pitch. He's going to keep his tail back and the crown of his head forward, right? So now when he turns through, Scherzer has more of what we would call level shoulders in the throw. So as he's coming through, his shoulders are pretty much level. The logo on his hat stays pretty vertical. When we have a pitcher that struggles, if I'm on that back view, the second base view, their tail to crown is almost stacked to actually the tail starts to push forward and the crown starts to go back. And then when they turn through, you see these big slanted shoulders and the logo on the hat starts to tilt away from the throwing column. So Scherzer does that really well. He keeps the tail back. He keeps the crown forward. Now, his back leg, remember, your arm is going to go in a pattern like this, where the elbow is going to point away and the thumb's going to point downward somewhat in the thumbs down type position. So there's going to be this, what we call a cornering action. There's an up, around, and in that takes place with the ball and socket of the shoulder and the forearm, and that needs to be matched in the lower limb at the hip and the ankle. Now, Scherzer's able to get his thigh bone and his shin bone to stay on the same cadence as his bicep and his forearm. What you'll see a lot of other pitchers that have the slanted shoulders is that thigh bone and the shin bone don't have the same sort of relationship with the bicep and the forearm. And now picture this thing going hundreds of miles an hour and then the thigh bone stopping. There's a disconnect in that chain. And then what suffers is the UCL. So you have to keep the thigh bone and the shin bone. You have to keep that whole column, the right side of the body, on the same page. Scherzer does that really well. He's able to do that really well because he's got the tail back and the crown forward. And then one of the things that he does on the front leg, the secret sauce that I try to get across to all these pitchers, is keep your front heel out of the mound. And what you'll notice with Scherzer is that when the pressure hits his left leg, he almost gets into a squat. He lifts his heel up and he lets all that pressure just keep going in the direction that it was meant to be going, which was loading up into his left side. So remember what I talked about earlier. If you put that heel down, that foot is the platform. So it's not supposed to move. The shin's doing the movement. When you put the heel down, you lock the shin. You like ski boot your shin. So now think of all these pitchers that have these left side, front side problems, or picture what would happen if the front side stops turning and the back side's trying to release through. They're like puzzle pieces, each side of the body. They got to work together. So now you have the same thing happening on the back leg where the thigh bone and the shin bone are not going to be on the same page, but it's going to happen because when you go to put your front leg into the ground, you're putting your heel into the ground. I see this a lot from pitchers. Their left leg goes super straight. Their shin stops moving, but everything else in the body besides that foot and shin on the left leg is going to still keep turning. That's the follow through. So the right side of the body is going to still keep trying to go that way. The thigh bone in the left leg, the torso, everything's going to keep trying to follow through, but you've got your left heel in the mound and you're stopping your shin from turning. And now you're burning up either the top of that thigh bone or the bottom of it. You're burning up your knee or you're burning up your hip. So Scherzer does those things really well. Tail to crown, he keeps his back leg on the same cadence as his arm. And then his front leg, he keeps the heel up so that he can just keep the shin opening. And he has a nice soft front knee. So we tell our throwers, our quarterbacks, anybody, soft knee, eggshell heel. So get your heel up and then let the knee go soft so that front leg, the shin and the thigh can stay on the same page. An easy cue to think of is when you're throwing, have level shoulders, because that'll keep more of a tail back, crown forward, as opposed to shooting your shoulders like this. You're going to stop the way that it's designed to move. And that's why you'll see so many UCLs. It's just all those things that I told you that Scherzer does well. I can't find many pitchers doing it like Scherzer does. And everybody else has elbow trouble. And he's only really had that little oblique problem. And if you look at him with the Mets, his tail to crown actually started to go the other way. So when he was younger, Scherzer, his tail to crown was really well drawn out. When he had the injury, it wasn't as clean as it used to be. And so that's everybody's subject to change. And what I would say about the Tom Brady's and the Scherzers and the guys that you were speaking to of having longevity, the Nolan Ryans, GOATA is something that we are all given at birth. Okay, so this is an embryological thing, meaning when the body is developing, when the fetus is developing, it's developing GOATA. Literally, the spine is going to set first. The lower limbs are going to spiral out. So the tissue of the leg is set on a spiral inward so that when you spiral it outward, you take out the slack and then you snap it back in. That's our pattern. Bow to corner. We hold inside ankle bone high. The foot doesn't move so the shin and the thigh can. Everybody has it, but unfortunately, the second you come out of the womb, you're subject to decode. You're subject to funny shoes, car seats, high chairs, chairs. You're just subject to a world that's really not of the hunter-gatherer. It's not the floor-sitting, walking, running, throwing, swinging world as much as it is a chair-sitting world, a funny training movement world. And so what you see, what's marvelous about a Tom Brady or a Max Scherzer is they were able to keep that. Meaning if you went and looked back at Scherzer and Brady walking around as 12-year-old, 13-year-olds, they had the straight feet. They got the inner ankle bones high. You watch Tom walk, you watch Scherzer walk, you watch Aaron Rodgers walk, you watch a John Elway walk, you watch Nolan Ryan walk. Pretty close feet, pretty straight, as opposed to what you see a lot of athletes now is feet wide and feet crooked. So they were able to keep more of their GOATA. It doesn't mean that you can't lose some of it and still have some things like young Nolan Ryan with the Angels had some pretty serious elbow pain and elbow inflammation. He's a guy that does a lot of things really well, but he wasn't quite able to fully corner his back hip. And so that's always going to leave room for a little bit of elbow problems, but he did a good job with a lot of other stuff, which keeps him more durable than your other pitchers. So it's kind of like, where are these athletes at on the scale of GOATA and WOTA? GOATA 10 being like as ideal as it can get. Everything's working perfectly. Or WOTA 10, it's completely fallen apart. We assess to say, where are you at? those people you listed are pretty close to the GOATA side. They're going to have more durability because of that.
Can you just explain one thing to me? And I'm gonna be GOATA. Is it an acronym for something? Is it part of your body?
GOATA would stand for greatest of all time actions. So like when Gilly was looking at those, the 4 super tribes, the child development, the indigenous cultures, the decade plus athlete, and the 70 plus age groupers, what he found, those global laws that we call them inside ankle bone high, columns, bow, corner, which we didn't really get into any of that, but the common characteristics that we saw, we called the global laws of GOATA. GOATA just means the greatest of all time actions. So the greatest of all time actions are these things that are going to keep you durable. WOTA is just the worst of all time actions. So when you start to trend more towards WOTA, well, that's when the musculoskeletal system is off of its design. It starts to fall apart, right? So it's a finite being made in a perfect image. Like it's built to work perfectly, but because of that, it's very finite, meaning that when it starts to go away from its design, it starts to tell you, right? It starts to bark at you with a little bit of knee. Now, we've done a fabulous job of naming all these different injuries, but we're not doing a very good job of treating them outside of pills, shots, and surgeries because we never were able to find the base blueprint, right? Like I said, if you don't go frame by frame, you don't see that the musculoskeletal system moves pressure, right? My favorite way of explaining this is picture that, an image of Floyd Mayweather or Muhammad Ali hitting someone in the face. And you see that musculoskeletal system of the person being deformed, right? Well, that is pressure that just hit that person's face. And you see how much pressure a human body is loading up and releasing when you get to stop it frame by frame and see a head almost deforming upon a right hook or a jab. Well, that same amount of pressure that's coming out through that dude's face is going into your foot and ankle complex. So the same way that it can explode and unhinge a jaw, if it's not organized properly at your foot and ankle, it can explode an Achilles tendon. It can explode meniscus tissue. It can explode your ACL. So if you take that image even of a baseball bat hitting a ball in slow motion, you see the ball starting to compress, or you see a football spinning and catching its spiral. Like that's the pressure that you get to see only when you slow it down frame by frame. You can see a golf ball getting hit and the ball just shrinking. So you can see pressure in certain instances when it's translated through an object or through someone's face, but it's much more difficult to see, impossible to see in real time. But when we go frame by frame and we watch a body land in their jog or their run, well, when the pressure hits, I get to see what their foot and ankle deforms into. Does it form into a bow, or does it form into this collapsed, unorganized system that's the same thing as that face getting hit? It's not stable. It's susceptible to tears. So you have your greatest of all time actions, which is GOATA. You have your worst of all time actions, which is GOATA. You want to move pressure like a GOATA through the musculoskeletal system. When you start to move pressure like a WOTA, that pressure will break you, and it can show up in a variety of forms of non-contacts. An ACL is a non-contact. An Achilles tear is a non-contact. But that back spasm that you had the other day moving groceries, that's a non-contact. Those shin splints, that knee tendonitis, that elbow, those are non-contacts. There's no explained reason for them. They're just there. You hurt, and then eventually you have to go get a pill shot or surgery. So our goal at GOATA is to get rid of those because we see them as a function or as a sort of a collateral damage, a consequence of dysfunction of a very simple, basic pattern that we can now assess, we can identify, and we can rehabilitate.
Well, you're right, because picking up groceries about a couple years ago pulled my back, and all I did was pick up a thing, and I'm like, oh, and I was done.
It's not that one movement that gets you. It's the way that you've been tracking your body throughout years, months, days. And then it's that one, straw that broke the camel's back. And that's what it does. And I was the same way. Like I was throwing out my back really from 8th grade until I met Gilly and Gary. And I would throw my back out. Like I'd be going, you sit in meetings for football. We'd go to do QB center exchange. I would go to get under the center and go, like, I'm like, oh no, like it happened again. I spazzed my back out. Then you got to go through practice because There's more non-contacts that you got to live through. You still got to go to your 9 to 5. You still got to play through some of these non-contacts. There's more non-contacts that you got to live through and play through than put you on the IR, which is uncomfortable to live in. So even if you're just a regular Joe doing your 9 to 5, when you've got pain, it's going to stop your performance. It's going to hinder your performance. So if we can remove pain from the equation, performance is going to increase immediately because you just feel good. Your brain can focus and the body feels like it can do what it needs to do.
Well, we thank you for being a part of our show. I did want to ask you one last thing. GOATA implementing the approach, how people start to kind of get involved in it. Like, what is it that they need to do? Are these programs really, are they built for individual people? Like, can anyone do it? So where do they start? If someone came to me, hey, David, saw your podcast, want to know about this GOATA, what is the first thing they need to do?
I would go to, so we have a couple options. I would go to GOATAmovement.com first. And so GOATAmovement.com will give you at least a starting point to the system. If you're looking to understand more of what I talked about with the assessment and like what, base exercises you would start with, that lifestyle component of the 90%, we have a get assessed button on there that can lead you to basically working with me, where you will get assessed by me. You'll have a video of the assessment. You'll have a regimen. You'll have all this stuff that we just talked about to get you started. If you're somebody that wants to go in person, I recommend looking for a GOATA coach. So on GOATAmovement.com, we have a link to go find GOATA coaches in your area, so you can maybe get in person and get a little more of a better understanding of what's going on. And then we also have a website that's really a do-it-yourself recode website. And that's called recode225.goatamovement.com. So this past year, we've been kind of revamping our websites and everything, but Recode225 will be sort of the do-it-yourself program where it tells you where to start. It's got corrective routines in there. It's got a weekly workouts, and there's education. So it's kind of a one-stop shop to get a very good understanding of what GOAT is and to start training right away. If you're someone who's a coach, or you're like, well, I want the deep dive, I want to understand the good pattern and the bad pattern, we have a website called GOATAinstitute.com. We have a fully automated certification that you can jump into today. All you have to simply do is watch each of the videos twice. So there's about 40 plus videos in there ranging in duration, but you watch each video twice, it emails you a certificate. So it's a very simple approach to understanding the education. Along with that Institute package, you get a invitation to a lab weekend. So every other month throughout the year down in New Orleans, we hold a lab. And so it's a 3-day lab weekend for our coaches. They come down, we deep dive, even further into the system. A lot of the exercises we go over and all that stuff. So that's sort of if you're really trying to understand it, I would go to GOATAinstitute.com. If you feel like you need someone to help you, go to GOATA coaches through GOATAmovement.com. If you need someone to help you kind of assess, go to Get Assessed. And then if you're just kind of like, well, I want to do it myself, I can figure this out, then I would go to Recode225.goatamovement.com. And then the 2 pages that I would visit on Instagram would be at GLSGOATA_education. So that'll be my page on Instagram. You'll be able to kind of get a synopsis. There's some pinned posts up there that will give you more information, more visual stuff than what you can take away from the podcast. And then Gary's page is at GLSGOATA_training. So, and I'll send those two.
Yeah, send them to us. We'll make sure we keep it easy. We get them all into the post, so we can direct people there. But yeah, I don't think David and I are probably never going to look at somebody throwing a baseball the same, or
that's the goal.
Even we're never going to look at somebody. I'm never going to watch.
You didn't realize this was going to happen right before Christmas. Yeah, right, I just ruined your guys.
What do you mean? I start practicing in January, hopefully, and I'm going to look at every kid. I'm like, let me see your GOATA. Let me see your feet. Let me see what
you're going to look at their feet. It's one of those things I tell people, you're already looking at this. You just now have a parameter of what's good and bad. So think of you can think of your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, your buddy in Chicago, and you could snap your fingers and you can picture their posture. You know how they stand. You know how they walk. So we have a natural ability as humans that we biomimic. We mimic those around us. That's why you walk like your dad, or you have the same mannerisms as your family members. So we're already doing this, but now GOATA gives you that one's good and that one's bad. So now you get to go back and like, oh, that makes sense why the straight foot kid always was a little bit faster and more durable, even though he was smaller. And so then the crooked foot kid was always getting hurt. So it gives you a new lens to look at movement through.
Yeah, I'm going to go home and I'm going to tell my older kids to go sit on the floor
Immediately.
So
Right.
we'll do that. So here we are, Ricky Stanzi. We really appreciate your time today. Co-owner and director of education at GOATA. Thanks for being with us.
Appreciate
Thanks for being with us. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you guys as well.
I will be in contact with you because I need to get my stuff. I want to live a long life, but I want to do it the right way. So
we'll get you right.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for the show today.
Episode 19.